Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to KTBS 3 News. We appreciate you being with us, and we do have a special guest in our studios tonight. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is with us. Mike, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me again.
You bet. Always a pleasure. I know you've been busy.
We have been very busy. I've been all around the country, Jeff. As of yesterday, I think we've been in 198 cities in 39 states.
Wow.
Campaigning and making sure all of our incumbents get reelected for the Republican Party and all of our extraordinary candidates that we've recruited. And I feel very bullish about November. I think it's all going to pay off.
As you travel around the country, what's the sentiment, the feeling that you get from the people?
It's the same everywhere. It doesn't matter, I mean, whether I'm Montana to Florida, Maine to California, it's the same thing. Everybody is so fed up about the rising cost of living, the rising crime rates. They're so concerned about that open border and all the catastrophe that has been to the country. And they're worried about the instability that they see on the world stage, because our adversaries, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, are actually coordinating and working together because they see this as an opportunity. We got to take this seriously, and this election is the most important one of our lifetimes.
Look, I think that's absolutely true, and some of the things going on in D.C. right now, I know that you're probably, even you are probably standing back going, what is going on here, right?
We haven't had normal times in a long time, I mean, I keep saying I'm tired of making history, I just want to have normal Congress, but nobody knows what that means anymore. It's a dangerous time. It's the most dangerous time since World War II. The economy is on the brink. Everything is broken, and we've got to fix it. But the good news is, because of the wisdom of our founders, they give us an opportunity to do that every 2 years for Congress, every 4 years for president, and this is our opportunity, and we got to take it.
That's the Constitution you're talking about, but of course, it seems like a lot of times the Constitution is getting shuffled aside now.
That's certainly true. I've tried to be steady hands at the wheel to try to hold fast to those founding principles that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world, but they really are in question and under challenge right now more than they have been. This is not just a battle between Republicans and Democrats right now, as I said at my speech at the Republican convention. This is now a battle between two completely different visions about who we are as Americans and who we're going to be. And I think it's really incumbent upon all of us to dig in deeply to those issues and make sure we're making the right decision for our families, for our community, our state, and our country.
One of those issues centers around voting. Who's going to vote?
Yeah.
I mean, California wants to, or they are now letting, I guess, illegal immigrants vote. The governor here in Louisiana just issued, I'm sure you know that, an executive order not allowing that in the state of Louisiana. You have the SAVES Act. And I think that has to be protected, right? The sacred right to vote in America.
Yeah, it's a long explanation of what is happening, but right now all the illegals coming across the border are going out to the country. They're shipping them around, planes, trains, automobiles. When they get to their destination, they're told by the administration's officials to go to the local welfare office and sign up for benefits. And when you're there, they give you a second form that says, do you want to register to vote? Right now, Jeff, under federal law, states are prohibited from requesting proof of citizenship. All they do is check a box and say, I'm a U.S. citizen, yeah, let me participate. So we passed the SAVE Act to solve that problem. I put it on the House floor 8 weeks ago. 198 House Democrats voted against that legislation. Shows you where they are.
Yeah.
We passed it through the House anyway. I sent it over to the Senate. It is sitting on Chuck Schumer's desk collecting dust. They want illegals to vote in the election. There's no other conclusion that you can draw.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to make sure the American people understand that. It's a serious, serious problem.
It really is. You did have a few Democrats vote in favor of it in the House, right?
A handful, but 198 went on record.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe they did, Jeff,
Yeah.
but they went on record to say that they're okay with that, and we got to make sure the voters know it.
Wow, I tell you what. Talk about the upcoming election. President Trump running for the second term. Kamala Harris anointed. Things are just not normal in American politics right now.
No, they're not. She was anointed. They call themselves the party of small d democracy, but they can't really claim that anymore because no one voted for Kamala. They just pushed her in place. Look, she is the most radical leftist person who has ever even thought about running for president on a major party ticket. This is not your father's Democratic Party. It's a totally different party. She is a San Francisco radical. She had the most liberal, progressive, woke progressive voting record of anybody who has ever served in the Senate. She was left of Bernie Sanders. But right now, they're engaging in this magical campaign of fantasy over fact, and they want people to believe somehow that she's a moderate, thoughtful policymaker. It's certainly not true. And so we have to prosecute that case. We're less than, 65 days out from the election almost, and early voting starts in some of the swing states much sooner than that. So we've got a very short window of time to make sure people know the real facts, because they're scary. She cannot be the president.
Yeah, I have some more questions about Kamala Harris. We'll ask those coming up with Speaker Mike Johnson right after this. All right, we are back with Speaker of the House Mike Johnson from Bossier Parish. Always our pleasure to have him here. I wanted to ask you some more questions about Kamala Harris. She wants people to believe that she has reversed her position on almost everything, but then she did this recent interview with Dana Bash saying, my beliefs are the same. So, I mean, what's going on here?
Yeah, she says she's true to her values. The problem is her values are not those of the American people. The vast majority of the people in this country are still center-right. They believe in common sense. They want an economy that works for them, not against them. They want strength projected from the White House on the world stage. And right now we have the opposite of all that. I mean, remember Kamala Harris's policies and what they would mean for a state like Louisiana. She wants to ban fracking. Yeah. She's against the energy industry. She co-sponsored legislation in the Senate, Jeff, that would ban gas-powered vehicles, cars and trucks, by 2040. That's where her values are. She's against border security. Remember, she's the border czar. The reason we have this disaster.
Although they've been trying to back away from that.
Oh, yeah, sure, right. She's been in charge the entire time. And truthfully now, we all know the truth about Joe Biden. He's not really been in charge and in full control for quite some time. Yeah. And she bragged about being the last person in the room every single time. Yep. She co-authored and in fact was the tie-breaking vote on all these inflation-inducing pieces of legislation that they passed in recent years. She's responsible for this, and she can't run away from it.
She's trying. She's trying. Let me ask you about, I was going to ask you about the anointing. You talked about, the Democrats always talk about being the party of democracy, but that's clearly not true. Anybody with half a brain can figure that out.
Clearly not true. 14 million people participated in the Democratic Party's primary process. They chose Joe Biden overwhelmingly. And when they decided he was no longer useful for their cause, they pushed him over the edge and they brought in Kamala and anointed her. Among the decisions she made right after being anointed or coronated, the first decision she made was to boycott the speech of Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel when I invited him to address the joint session of Congress. She should have been sitting right next to me, but she decided not to go there because they've abandoned Israel. So the Jewish community is coming into the Republican Party. So are Hispanics and Latinos, because they're very upset about that open border and all the things that's been happening in their communities. The black voters, African American voters are coming into the Republican Party in record numbers because people are desperate for answers and they know that our party can provide them. And we're looking forward to continuing to make that case all the way through Election Day. I
want to switch gears just a little bit. Mark Zuckerberg, we talked about that the other day, but he recently admitted that at least Facebook and several of the other tech companies collectively worked to suppress information during the last presidential election cycle. At least, I guess it's out in the open. We already knew this, right? But now he admitted it.
We've known this for years. Zuckerberg is no hero. He participated in it. He just admitted to his wrongdoing. What was happening is in 2020 and 2021, the Biden administration was meeting regularly with Silicon Valley tech executives who run all the social media platforms and giving them lists of persons to censor and silence from the internet, to turn down, volume censor they call it, turn down their posts. And we had a federal district court here in Louisiana litigate the case because Louisiana and Missouri sued the Biden administration to stop that. And the judge issued a more than 130-page federal court opinion on July 4th of 2023 and said that this was the biggest attack on the First Amendment since its creation. Wow. And it was Orwellian and dystopian. And he said it was the blatant censorship of things that the American people were privy to know about, including adverse opinions about the efficacy of COVID vaccines, even parody and humor about President Biden and his policies, and importantly, the Hunter Biden laptop story. They made sure that the American people didn't know that before the election cycle last time. It had huge consequences, and it's just incredible what they've been allowed to get away with.
I think 17% of the Biden voters said they would have changed their vote had they known about the laptop.
Exactly right. I mean, history now affirms that Joe Biden would never have been elected president had the social media platforms not done that. I mean, we can't rewind the clock. We can't go back in history, but we have to make sure that that madness does not go forward.
How do you do that moving forward?
Well, we got to win the election. I mean, I have only the control of one chamber of Congress,
Right.
and we've done a lot of important legislation in this space and others in the House, but it is sent over to the Senate where Chuck Schumer and the Democrats run the show, and they've killed all of our legislation. So we've got to have Republicans in charge of both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House, and we've got to have Donald Trump in the White House. If we get unified government where all parties are aligned, man, we will put this on turbo and fix these problems.
All right, good enough. We are speaking with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Our conversation will continue right after this. All right, we are back with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He is our special guest in our studio tonight. Always a pleasure. I want to ask you about RFK Jr. Recently throwing his support behind President Trump. Obviously, that's going to be a help, I would think. But now he had the problem where he was trying to get on the ballots. Now he can't get off the ballots in certain states. This is craziness.
It's a mess. You know, it was late in the process, but some of the states are not complying because they want him on the ballot. They think somehow it's going to help the other team. And it may. You know, that's part of election integrity that we've been trying to ensure around the country, but some of these states, they all have their own systems and it's gotten out of control. I think it's very telling that RFK Jr., who comes from obviously an historic, maybe the most famous Democratic Party family, and as a lifelong liberal Democrat, I think it's very telling that he decided, he pulled, you know, the alarm and said, I've got to endorse President Trump. But why? Because Kamala Harris is so far left, it even frightens RFK. I mean, that's a really important signal that's been sent to people. You've got to recognize. I mean, when I was a kid, Jeff, almost everybody in Louisiana was a Democrat. We were all, everybody was registered Democrat. I hardly knew Republicans, very few. But now it's dramatically different. You know, over the decades, the Democratic Party has left the values of common sense Americans, and they don't represent Louisiana values. And everybody needs to understand these elections truly have consequences now, and you've got to think very thoughtfully about which party you're voting for.
The Democrats of the days of JFK would be Republicans today.
Absolutely, yes. JFK would be a Republican today. I mean, you look at the policies that he advanced. It wouldn't even fly at the Democratic convention right now, but they're trying to pretend like they're for the people. They're really not. They're for the socialists. I mean, this is a Marxism on the march. They're socialist in their ideology. Some of them say it out loud. Some of them try to hide it. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are trying to hide it right now, but that's truly who they are.
Do you think the young people that seem to be at least so enthusiastic over Walz and Harris, do they even know what they're supporting?
Of course not, no. And if you ask them, I mean, that's what the polling shows. Vast majorities of people who are even in the Democratic Party, 80%, 75% of them don't know key positions that Kamala Harris has taken or what they would do to the economy and our national security and to your family, the cost of living and everything else. Her policies are disastrous. They have been, and she has a lifelong record. She served in the Senate. She's been the vice president for almost 4 years. We know what she's about. So this election has to be about record and not rhetoric. Everybody has to do their homework. This one really matters.
How about the interview, I mentioned it before with Dana Bash, but she had her running mate alongside. That was a little unusual.
Yeah, it's not a great showing. She can't even face the media that has been fawning over her coronation as the nominee. How will she face Vladimir Putin and the Ayatollah in Iran and Xi Jinping in China? She can't face friendly media. How will she sit down and deal with those characters? They're enemies of our country, and they're all coordinating together. They see Kamala as a weak leader, a potentially weak commander-in-chief, and it's very, very dangerous for all of us.
I wanted to ask you about the attempted assassination of President Trump. What went on that day? What is continuing to be happening with the Secret Service and the investigation there? This is disturbing.
Very disturbing. I put together a task force in Congress. It's bipartisan with subpoena authority. The reason I created a task force is I didn't want to send this to one of our regular committees and have an investigation of all this bogged down for months and months and months. So they're in a very short timeline to produce a report with the actual answers of what happened. Right now, what we believe, Jeff, I'll just tell the KTBS audience and our local folks that from everything I've seen, I just believe it was an unforgivable, incredible level of incompetence and not a larger conspiracy. We've not seen any evidence of that yet, and I'm relieved by that. but certainly not relieved that the Secret Service dropped the ball as they did. So we've already had the resignation of the director of the Secret Service. There'll be much more accountability coming, but primarily we've got to make sure this never ever happens again. And that's why the investigation is so important.
I'll agree with that. You do not believe that the lack of protection by the Secret Service was politically motivated?
I don't. And look, I'll just tell you, inside baseball, this is not classified. It will be coming out soon. But I've listened to and seen the videos and audio of the confusion and the chaos between the national officials there and the local officials at the time of the shooting. And they're running around kind of panicking at one point saying, I thought you guys had it. I thought you. So the Secret Service thought the local law enforcement guys were watching that roof and vice versa. So it was just a terrible lapse of communication and then a series of errors on top of one another. It was all so preventable. We lost a patriotic American in that crowd, and we almost lost the former president and future president. It's serious, serious business.
All right, back with more with Speaker of the House Mike Johnson coming up right after this. House Speaker Mike Johnson is our special guest in the studio tonight, and I want to ask you about the continued persecution of President Trump. Jack Smith coming up with yet another indictment. This never ends.
No, Jack Smith is grasping at straws now. He's had 2 of his cases already dismissed by the courts. They're going after him. It's not about the law, it's about politics, and everybody can see that. And the American people have just been so fed up with the lawfare. President Trump, as you noted, has been persecuted. He is the most persecuted political figure, certainly of the modern era, probably in all of U.S. history. He's tough, and I talk with him all the time and trying to keep him encouraged, and he's very frustrated right now by it, but he's got to keep a cool head. I mean, they're after him because they're threatened by him because of his policies and how we're going to turn around this socialist agenda that Biden and Harris have been pursuing. But I think he'll get through this. I think he'll, all these cases are bogus. They'll be thrown away eventually. But it's really shameful what they've done to our system of justice because it undermines the people's faith in the justice system itself. And that's really dangerous in a constitutional republic like ours.
And that's near and dear to you.
It is, and it's something that we got to defend and preserve. And it's going to take us a while, Jeff, to rebuild the people's faith in all these institutions of government. But I'm optimistic, and I believe we can. I mean, look, I'm trying to be an ambassador of hope as I fly around the country and talk to everyone. I genuinely believe our best days are ahead of us. We just got to get the country back on track, and I think this is our opportunity to do it.
Well, as long as it's hope and not joy, right?
Yeah. Well, joy comes in the morning, as Scripture says. You got to get the job done first, and we're ready to roll the sleeves up. Look, we've laid out our agenda and our policies. It's a stark contrast between what the other team is offering. If you care about your family and national security and the economy, and Louisiana's economy in particular, with energy being the center of it, you've got to vote Republican. It's good for everyone. We will return law and order, we'll return a thriving economy. We know how to do it, and I begin that work will begin in earnest, I think, in January in the new Congress.
All right, thank you, Mike. We not quite done. We'll be back to wrap this up right after this. We got just about 30 seconds left with our time here with Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. I want to thank you again for being here and wish you good luck up in D.C. because you need it, right?
Well, thanks so much. Look, we're going to grow the majority after this election. My job will be easier, and I'll keep representing Louisiana as best I can. And we're grateful to everybody back home who gives us the opportunity to do this. The first speaker from Louisiana in U.S. history. We're going to try to make you proud.
All right. It's been our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of the United States Congress. That's going to do it for now.